Let's talk about democratic socialism.
Democratic socialist.
Democratic socialists.
Democratic socialism, like what's practiced in Scandinavia.
What does democratic socialism entail?
I know. Who's not talking about it? Fueled by Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez's unstoppable, unquestioning exuberance,
Science should not be partisan.
and Bernie's Viking-like conquest of the Nordic model,
And I think we should look to countries like Denmark, like Sweden, and Norway.
everybody already seems to have an opinion about democratic socialism. You either love it, like they do, or you loathe it with a burning passion usually reserved for murderous dictators like Uncle Joe Stalin. Back and forth we go. But what are we really arguing about? If you stop and listen, those two words, democratic and socialism, can mean fundamentally different things to different people. Most of us, save a few crusty, tenured university Bolsheviks, agree that old school socialism in practice has always resulted in humanitarian catastrophe, producing, number one, violent oppression of individuality, minorities, and free choice. Number two, imprisonment and murder of political dissidents and all other nonconformists. Number three, horrific mass starvation. Seriously, every single time. Understandably, democratic socialists object to any association with this tragic history. That, they say, wasn't real socialism. That was authoritarian socialism. Ruthless dictators like Stalin or modern-day Venezuelan strongman Nicolas Maduro hijacked the successful implementation of a righteous idea with their unquenchable thirst for blood and power. Under democratic socialism, advocates believe that things will be different. This time, the people, you and me, will be in charge. So who's right? Let's break it down, word by word. Let's start with democracy. This will be easy, right? The word represents a near universally celebrated value. But what does it really mean to you? Ancient Greeks, who coined the term, meant rule by the people, imagining a community-based process of thoughtful deliberation where responsible citizens work together towards consensus. Can democracy work without reaching consensus? In our everyday lives, we are all radical Democrats, constantly deliberating options, making endless choices big and small. But we only seem to reach a common consensus on a few fundamental things, universal rules of human conduct like don't hurt people and don't take their stuff. On virtually everything else, we constantly, passionately disagree. But that's okay, right? Our differences are strengths that make everyone better off. That's how I think about democracy, the freedom to choose for ourselves, what books to read and what music to listen to. In our radically democratic world, many music fans absolutely love Taylor Swift. Good for them. For reasons I don't comprehend, she has almost 39 million monthly listeners on Spotify. I happen to prefer streaming hours-long Grateful Dead concerts from the 1970s, but I'm keenly aware that my obviously superior preferences are not for everyone. The good news for music lovers is that Spotify hosts over 1.2 million bands and musicians who are listened to for at least 100 hours. So everybody gets to continually vote for what they want, accommodating even my weird minority tastes. Imagine living in a world where we didn't get to choose democratically, where the government forced everyone to listen to Taylor Swift's greatest hits on an endless loop. Because, well, majority rules. Seriously. Can you imagine any hell worse than this? When it comes to politics and government, many people think of democracy as a system where people vote for what they want and then the majority wins. It sounds good enough until you think of the real-world implications. My esoteric tastes in music aside, do we really want a narrow majority of voters to have that much power over the rest of us? Giving the majority absolute power over minorities could easily result in some pretty ugly outcomes. That's why in the United States, democracy is limited by our Constitution, a common set of rules that are supposed to be applied equally, specifically to protect each of us and our minority rights from mob rule. This brings us back to the word socialism. What does it really mean? And how would it work in practice? On its face, it seems to be talking about society and the ways that we should behave socially towards one another, neighbor to neighbor, with mutual respect. That sounds pretty good to me. But somewhere along the way, socialist thinkers started demanding that top-down government planners own and control the means of production. That includes your stuff, by the way. Socialism came to mean total abolition of private property and an all-powerful state that directs all aspects of how citizens conduct their lives and businesses, from the books you read to the songs you sing. Don't believe me? In a pattern typical of other socialist experiments, Fidel Castro banned the Beatles in Cuba in the 1970s. Rock and roll was, he said, a threat to the revolution. Doesn't sound very democratic to me, and it definitely doesn't sound very social. Believe it or not, the word socialism didn't always have these toxic connotations. In the early 19th century, the political philosophy of socialism emerged as a reaction against an all too powerful aristocracy lording over an increasingly industrialized working class. Henri de Saint-Simon, a French thinker often credited for coining the word socialism, wanted to take the unearned political power of aristocrats and disperse it among the producers who actually contributed to society. He wanted to replace the ruling aristocrats with an elite group of scientists who would reorganize society from the top down. Karl Marx, co-author of the Communist Manifesto, would later mock so-called utopian socialists like Saint-Simon. Marxism's rethinking of socialist doctrine demanded a violent transition from late-stage capitalism, casting factory owners and employers as the villains in a worldwide class struggle. He actually called for a dictatorship of the proletariat. Was it majority rule? Maybe. But Marxism was not democratic by any stretch of the imagination. So, does democracy mean freedom of choice and socialism mean dispersing power to the people who actually create things? Or does democracy mean the majority rules and socialism mean absolute concentrated power, a dictatorship, and government ownership of all things? The challenge faced by any type of socialism, democratic, utopian, or otherwise, is twofold. First, when reorganizing society, how do we compel people to act according to the plan? What if they choose not to comply? Second, who decides what the new plan is? Could any single group of humans, no matter how smart or benevolent, ever know enough to redirect the priorities in your life? I'm hoping that by getting back to the roots of what these words actually mean, we can find some common ground with young people searching for better answers. Whatever you want to call it, maybe together we can agree that the best way to achieve a better, more just society is through honest deliberation and persuasion, not a dictatorship or an elite council or even a simple majority that rules over us with an uncaring fist.